Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth Winter Data AI Meetup. Thanks for joining us today. Our next session is led by Naveen Nagar. He will explore modern data engineering with Microsoft Fabric and show how it unifies data ingestion, transformation, orchestration, and analytics in one platform. You will learn how Fabric helps build scalable pipelines and simplify complex data workflows. If you enjoy this event, please like and subscribe to support our community. Your feedback helps us improve future meetups. And if you have any questions, please write them in the chat. We will discuss them after the talk. And now let's welcome our speaker, Naveen. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Thanks for setting up the context. So yeah, hello everyone, and I'm here today to uh, cover the topic today, modern data engineering with Microsoft Fabric. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining. So thanks for joining first of all. And yeah, let's start with today's session. And before starting, let me first introduce myself. So I'm Naveen Nagar. I have like 15 plus years of IT experience in data analytics domain. I worked with like multiple clients and across sectors like telecom, healthcare, energy, insurance, all of the sector. And this is my expertise where I'm working currently in architecting, designing, implementing cloud data solution, including technologies like Azure, Big Data, Azure Cloud, including Data Factory, Synapse, Fabric, Azure Databricks, and so on. I work with EPAM as a lead software engineer currently. So yeah, that's it about me. And we are going to start with the session today. So yeah, let's get ahead with the session and let's cover the agenda. So in today's session, we are going to start with very basic. We are going to understand what is Microsoft Fabric, why it is like everyone is talking about Microsoft Fabric nowadays recently, why it is so much popular, what are the traditional challenges it is solving currently. We are going to learn the basic terminology that used in Fabric. We are going to understand in real life or real projects how the deployment pattern will look like. We are going to deep dive about one lake shortcuts and so on. We are going to understand how the lake house can basically help us in building the medallion architecture in data engineering. And then we are going to understand the feature of delta lake and some lake house table maintenance and all. We are also going to touch base on event house, how you can handle real-time events if you have such requirements. And at the end, we are going to see a short demo, including lake house and some basic overview of the Fabric capabilities. So yeah, with this, let's start with very basic question. What is Microsoft Fabric? And I would like to walk you through, before starting, what is Microsoft Fabric. I would like to understand what are the traditional challenges that we have currently when we are working with data, and what Microsoft Fabric is solving, or how Microsoft Fabric is solving them. So traditionally, if you work in data domain, we have a lot of different tools. For example, so if you are in Azure background, you have Azure Data Factory, Azure Synapse. For storage, you have Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. If you are using Databricks, then you have Azure Databricks, Synapse Data Engineering, Power BI for reporting. So there are a lot of tools. We can categorize like tools for data integration, tools for data pipeline, tool for like Spark transformation, data science requirement, real-time analytics, visualization, reporting, as I mentioned, like Power BI, for example. So all these are like various tools that we are using, and it's sometimes it's get very difficult. Not sometime, I would say, like it's always gets very difficult when you have a lot of different tools, and to integrate it, because in the end-to-end project you have to integrate all these tools and work in end-to-end project, for example. So it's very difficult or complicated to integrate everything in kind of a one unified experience. Also, if we talk about, like, that's how actually modern data engineering evolves, like how our nation we work with data has evolved. So if we go back in the time, we used to work with big data. We used to before introduction of the cloud, for example, we used to have our services, which is hardware and all, we used to manage ourselves. Then introduction of the cloud, we got infrastructure as a service where we rented the hardware and install everything. Then we came into the platform as a service kind of a solution, where currently, for example, whatever the tool that we are working with Azure or any other vendor or any other cloud provider, we use like platform as a service. We use just a different tool. We don't have to worry about the operating system and so on, but ultimately we use as a platform as a service. But so this is like typical example of different analytic solution how we have. But Microsoft Fabric is basically working with different tool, working with multiple vendors and so on, and creating like a complex environment when you integrate all of these tools. So Microsoft Fabric is exactly solving this problem. So let's understand like what is Microsoft Fabric. So Fabric is kind of a all-in-one analytic solution, you can say, which covers everything from data engineering, data movement, data integration, data science, real-time analytics, business intelligence, and all of this basically offered to you as one comprehensive suite of a different service. So you don't have to worry about different services. You just have one integrated solutions or services from Microsoft, and you just have to use for all your data analytics requirement. Fabric basically act kind of, you can understand it is a single stop shop where you can integrate everything for your analytics requirement, or everything will fall under one umbrella. So it's basically like we can say like end to end easy to use product, which is basically designed to simplify all your analytics need in unified platform. And as I mentioned, like I talked about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. So Fabric basically categorized or goes into the bucket where Microsoft is categorizing this Fabric as a complete software as a solution. So Microsoft is just providing you as a software for all this kind of analytics service, and you can use based on your requirement. You can use, and but you can use this as a software, like you are getting a software with all of different service, and you can just use this software as a service whatever you require. And the foundation of this whole Microsoft Fabric is one lake. So one lake is like again a revolutionary term where one lake is kind of a central storage area for our data storage. You can consider this one lake as a kind of a one drive for your data. So you have a central data lake as a service, and then you are going to use it depend or basically not depend on what analytics requirement that you have. So that is very quick about Microsoft Fabric. Now, if you go with Microsoft Fabric, as I mentioned, like you have different analytics requirement, you can fulfill all of your requirement based on that, and that's how you have different kind of an experience. If you're data engineering, you can work with Fabric. You can use any of the capability that are provided by Fabric. If you're data science, if you have data warehouse, real-time analytics, Power BI, data factory, and everything. So basically, in Fabric term, these are called an experience is kind of which domain or which particular group that you belong to, and what category of work that you wanted to work with Microsoft Fabric. So is it's all in one analytics solution that gives you different experience, and experience can be depend on different type of role that you are playing. But you'll not get a different experience if you're getting, for example, if you're data engineer, if you're data scientist, like you have to connect with one tool, and everything will be taken care by Microsoft Fabric. Like you will have a single tool where every role can work on basically. Now, before we go ahead, basically, I just wanted to cover some basic terminology. So, for example, as I already mentioned, like experiences, where we have the collection of capabilities, depend on your role, depend on which domain you are working on. Uh, Apart from experience, we have workspaces. So workspace is kind of the collection of items in a single environment. So basically it's kind of, you can say, a container where you are going to create items, you're going to create your uh, notebooks, pipelines, and anything, and basically like whatever that you want to connect. So if you want to collaborate with others, you can definitely do with the workspace. So this is a kind of a workspace which will be you'll be creating this workspace, and that's how you'll be collaborating with others. And we'll see in the demo section at the end of the session that how you create workspace and how you create different category of items in the workspace. Now, item as name suggests, like it is a different item that you create, and it can be anything. In Fabric, you create, like for example, lake house, you create a notebook, you create a pipeline. Everything is kind of a item. And basically any experience that you're working on, you are going to create an item. Then we have two terminology like capacity and tenant. So capacity is something, basically as name suggests, like it is like the compute power that you are going to buy from Microsoft Fabric. So you're going to buy some compute capacity, and and Microsoft Fabric basically provide those capacity in term of Fabric SKU. Like you get some compute unit you need to purchase based on the model that Microsoft suggests, and you get all of this the compute pre-purchased from Microsoft, or based on your model that you are buying on. But you purchase this capacity, and then any of the workload that you are using, you can use this capacity. So you don't have to worry about like data engineer will use this particular capacity or compute power, or other user will different use different capacity of power. You purchase some capacity, and any workload can use those capacity. Now tenant is something, basically it's on top of your organization. So if you are working in any organization, they are registered with Microsoft, and they have some domain. So every domain will have a single tenant. So it's kind of a, you can say, like a organization kind of environment with Microsoft Fabric. It contain everything, like all your data, all your services, and it sits at the top level. So for example, at the top level you have tenant. Every organization associated with one tenant. Definitely there are options where you can create multiple tenant, but by default you have one tenant with one organization domain. And within the tenant you have all of the subcategory related workspace items, and workspace you assign to those capacity. So these are like just some basic terminology I would like to highlight before we proceed. Now we will definitely go with the workspace, how we how we capacity, what kind of model Microsoft suggests and all. But first, let's get deeper understanding of what is one lake. I think we already touch base a little bit, but let's understand, like, so one lake, with all of this experience or all of this analytics need, one lake is kind of a single unified logical data lake for your entire organization. So it's like a data lake as a service. Whenever you buy a Fabric with Microsoft, you have a tenant, and with every tenant, this one lake comes by default. So if your organization A has bought a Fabric, for example, they will be getting one tenant, and by default you will get one tenant associated with your organization. So it's kind of a central data lake for your entire company. Now you understand in the terminology, like how you work with other Microsoft products. So for example, if you have Microsoft 365, right, you by default you get OneDrive when you log in with, or you registered with Microsoft 365. Now OneDrive is a place where you store everything, no matter what services that you are using. No matter, like, you are using PowerPoint, for example, you are using Microsoft Word, you are using other Microsoft Excel, or any other services, but ultimately your data gets stored in OneDrive. So the same concept apply here. You're buying Microsoft Fabric. By default, with your tenant, you will get a one lake, which is a central data lake. Again, this data lake is nothing but it's built on top of your existing. If you are familiar with Azure, then it's built on top of Azure Data Lake Gen 2 only. But it's kind of a centralized place that you will get your tenant. So you don't have to worry about like creating n number of storage, and that's the biggest problem when we work with the current landscape in Microsoft. You are creating n number of storage, like ADLS Gen 2 for this department, ADLS Gen 2 for this is department, X department, Y department, and it's sometimes it's very difficult to integrate all of this. So with one lake, they are solving this problem, and everything is getting stored at one place. Uh, just to go more deeper into one lake, as I think I already mentioned, like, you with the tenant, you already get one lake. So it's always like one lake associated with your tenant. Within the tenant, all this collaboration happen within the workspace. So if you see here, for example, you have workspace for you can create workspace for your sales department, or online, or any other department. For example, finance department, HR department, you might create different workspace, but everything, all this data will be stored into one lake within the specified directories or folder, and everything will be basically followed unified security and governance. I mean, definitely you can create some security protocols and governance protocol at each and every level, like tenant level, workspace level, item level, object level, everything. But you are going to create environment where you are going to follow unified security and governance model. Now with the workspace, definitely you can create a number of item, and workspace basically enable you to different part of our nation, as I mentioned. Now with workspace, when you create a workspace, you are going to attach this workspace with the given capacity, and we'll see definitely like how you attach those capacity and all. But every workspace will be associated with capacity that you purchase from Microsoft, which compute power for Microsoft, and that's how you basically get build on using of the capacity, basically. But ultimate goal of this one lake or this entire fabric is like you are not going to create data silos. I mean, that's also one of the biggest problem that we face in real time. Like you have multiple departments, you have HR department, finance department, and if if for example, if department HR want to use some finance data or use some other department data, then you simply like have an option to copy the data using pipeline or other method. But the fabric, the motto of the fabric or motto of the one lake terminology is like you're not going to unnecessary copy the data. You're not going to have data silos. So ultimately this goes to the theme of like one copy of data in your entire organization. And they basically go with this model, or the spirit of using the one lake or one copy or centralized copy. They also have the facility like one lake shortcuts. This is also like a very revolutionary in term of how this currently work basically. So shortcut is something where you basically you're going to create a symbolic link or virtual link basically, which ultimately it's going to point to another location. So suppose, consider an example, as I mentioned, like you have multiple department. For example, you get a requirement that department 2 would like to access data from department 1. Now you don't have to copy this data, you don't have to create data silos. So what you will do, you can create a shortcuts where this department A data can be used by department B by simply using the shortcut. So what you can do, you can create a shortcut which will point to the original data. You're not going to copy the data, and you can feel like in when you're working in department 2, you'll not feel like this data is not available to me directly. I mean, via shortcut, it will definitely, it will have a separate category that this is a shortcut. But when you query the data, you will feel like your data is sitting in your workspace with you. And it's not only with other workspaces within fabric only. I mean, you can definitely go as of now, like it support like you can go with create the shortcut with ADLS Zen2, for example. And ADLS is, for example, outside of your tenant, you can create it. You can create other external location, external cloud, for example S3 bucket, Dataverse. I think Google is also now in preview, but I think it's also getting supported now. So basically the again, like the spirit of the one lake is like you're not going to create copies, and this shortcut is basically allow you to create and point to the data where you don't need to create pipelines and all, and you're not going to copy this data. So y- and earlier, like if you have to copy this data and all, it's like a big task where you have to build a pipeline, you have to work about incrementally, and how you copy the data incrementally and all. Now once you create the shortcut, if any changes happen in the source side, so for example your data changing at the source side, right now it is like let's consider basic example, like you have 10 files, and you create that shortcut. You are going to match, or you're going to basically retrieve all 10 files, and tomorrow you got like 11th files. So you don't have to worry about the refresh cycle. Also automatically this data will get refreshed in your shortcut. So that's how this is like a very uh, a good feature basically you can use as part of one leg shortcut. And I will show you this also in demo, like the existing shortcut, how it works basically. Now uh, before we go ahead, as I mentioned, like you have to purchase capacity. So I'll just qu- quickly overview, give the overview of fabric capacity. So or we can say like fabric pricing. So basically there are two type of pricing model that you have. Either you go with the pay as you go model, or you go with the reservation model. I mean, there are differences in the amount. For example, if you go pay as you go, definitely this amount is like you it is something which basically how you use this. But if you use the reservation model, then Fabric will keep some resources for you, and you are basically going to get reservation on top of it. There are some discounters applicable, so it's again like depend on what you say, like depend on your requirement, depend on your organization requirement. You are going to purchase like either you go with the pay as you go or reservation. It's like individual choice of the organization how they want to go. But the theme here, or the main point here, is like you are going to purchase a shared pool of capacity. I mean, whatever capacity that you are buying, they basically generally comes with the number where you say like 2 capacity unit, which is F2, 4 capacity unit is like F4, 8, 16. It means like 2 and 4, the difference is like you are getting double power in term of compute infrastructure. So whatever the capacity units that you buy, you're going to purchase shared pool of capacity. I mean, at that time you're not going to say like this capacity is used for this particular workload on and so on. You buy a shared pool of capacity, and any workload in your entire analytics or data analytics area can use this capacity. And wherever you need, you definitely you can you don't need to pre-allocate all the capacity. You can do the usage and all depend on your workload. But that's how you don't have to worry about each individual stream capacity. You purchase something from Microsoft Fabric, and you basically all capacity units are basically available to use. Definitely, I think Fabric also started with different or Spark pool capacity. So you can purchase something Spark which is like dynamic in nature, and it can be outside the Fabric capacity, but by default it is like inside your Fabric capacity only. So you can scale up, scale down, everything you can do with the Spark requirement and all. So that's how basically you're going to purchase this Fabric capacity, and use your capacity model, whatever you purchase, like F2, F4, F16. There are some variant where you get Power BI licenses, at least viewer licenses starting from 64. But again, like it depend on your organization requirement, you can use this capacity. And again, like just to mention, like this capacity is only about your compute infrastructure. You have to purchase 1 lakh storage capacity, which is like very small in amount, but definitely you need to purchase like how many TBs that you want to get from Microsoft Fabric used in 1 lakh. And that's how you can basically purchase compute plus storage capacity. Now I would like to get your attention on Fabric deployment pattern. So now this is like very common question, like you have Fabric, but how you'll deploy in your real-time project, like how you're going to work with Fabric, and how you're going to what kind of environment model that you are going to create. So in short, like Fabric categorize those deployment pattern into 4 category. First is like they call it as a monolithic deployment. So what monolithic deployment is, like if you are very small organization and if you just want to do some POC, for example. So what you'll do, you'll create a single capacity. With you get a tenant. Within the tenant, you are going to create a single capacity, and then you're going to create a single workspace. So every user will be working within the workspace only, within the same workspace only, and will be creating all item and sharing all this compute power that you have. It's definitely not for the organization that want to deploy something in production or any big organization, but this is very small scale work which you can do with this monolithic deployment. So the second one is basically multiple workspace. You're going to create multiple workspace, but all are backed by a single capacity. So what you can do, you can create multiple workspaces. It also support your CI/CD. So that is one thing, that is the model which basically you'll see in many organization, in many of the project you'll see this model where you have multiple workspaces. So the multiple workspaces can be for example, you create workspace for dev, workspace for test, workspace for prod, and you can do your CI/CD deployment across your workspace. But the point to note here is like you are going to use single capacity. And when we say single capacity, it means your dev, test, prod, everything is attached to a same compute power. So you if you have such requirement where you don't have such SLAs to meet in production environment, you can go with this option. And I think many organizations also going with that. But again, like depend on your organization requirement. If you have such requirement where you want to segregate compute power for non-prod versus prod, then you go with the third model. So third model is basically you have multiple capacity created, and that's how you can segregate your so this is a perfect combination for most of the organization where you have workspace dev test associated with single capacity, which is like non-prod capacity. And again, like you can create multiple, you can segregate UAT also with the separate workspace. That's up to you. But you have non-prod into capacity A, where you have workspace A and B, and then you have another capacity which is directly associated with the prod only. And when we say capacity, it's also have some regional constraints. So if you purchase capacity, then you define in which region you are going to process this data or store this data. So if you have such requirements where for example you work in multi-geography company, for example, then you definitely are going to create a capacity per region or per geography, and that's how you basically maintain your data locality and this kind of thing. Also, if you have, for example, if you want to build some data mesh kind of an architecture, then also you can do, like you can assign something for central team, something for sales team, something for HR team, and so on. So you depend on your requirement, any model, then you can purchase. There is another one more model, like multiple fabric tenant. I mean, this is not like something which many or which all organization will use basically. But suppose you have a requirement here where you are acquiring, or a big company is acquiring some other company, and they might already have a tenant, or they might already they might create a new tenant for this subordination, for example. So that's how, like, you have multiple tenant, and each tenant is basically associating with one or other organization. So this is like classical case where if you are purchasing some company or acquiring some company, then they might go with this model. But majority of the time I see like third is mostly used, where you have multiple capacity backed by the single tenant, and definitely like multiple workspaces assigned to that. uh, so these are like a deployment pattern which you can go. So in the project, if you are starting with fabric, you can understand based on your requirement which particular model you would like to go with. Now, once we are in fabric, we have to store data. So there are various ways where you can store data. I mean, one is lakehouse that we are going to talk about in next couple of slide, this slide and next couple of slides. Then there is a data warehouse also available in the fabric. So depend on your workload, you can go with data warehouse also. And then there is a event house, which we'll also talk about in this session. So in this session, mainly we are going to talk about lake house and event house, not data warehouse, because it's ultimately based on your requirement. You can go with data warehouse and all the features are mostly same there, but mainly we are going to touch base on lake house. So in the fabric, lake house is an item. This item basically used to store and manage your structured and unstructured data. So currently, if you are working in environment where you are working with large data sets, either structured or unstructured, you might be using, for example, any storage location. So the lakehouse gives the same feature where you basically storing and managing any kind of a data. Now the lakehouse is built basically they have capability to analyze large volume of data. Definitely it's just like a schema on read format. And this lakehouse terminology, if you are not aware, like this terminology basically kind of you get a benefit of data warehouse plus you get a benefit of data lake, and that's how this term become data lakehouse. So lakehouse is basically you're using all the capability of data lake, where you're storing everything, structured or unstructured data, but you're also getting the capability of data warehouse, where you have the you're fulfilling the reporting requirement or traditional relational database requirement, asset properties and all. So that's how this lakehouse terminology, which used in all of our middle architecture, not in fabric but in other tools also, we are using this lakehouse. So fabric give you this lakehouse inbuilt into that. You can create a lakehouse. Within the lakehouse you have tables and files, two sections mainly. So within the table, if you're storing something in form of a table, then it's going to be a delta table. So we'll touch base in the next slide, I think, what is delta table maybe at high level. But ultimately this data will be stored in delta format if you are creating a table. Otherwise you can store your data in form of file also, and file can be anything, it can be any format basically. Now you you basically, once you create a lake house, by default it gives you a SQL analytics endpoint. So you get a SQL analytics endpoint link, and any user can go with the SQL analytics endpoint and query your data. So that also we'll see like how the SQL analytics endpoint works in real time. But that's how basically when you create a lake house, you get these options, and automatically you get this SQL endpoint category also. Now, as I mentioned, like in the lake house, your data gets stored in form of a delta. So let's understand very high level, like what is this delta lake format. So delta lake is open source storage framework that brings uh, reliability, uh, transaction capabilities, asset properties, and so on to your data lake. So you have a data in Parquet format only, but along with the Parquet, you are going to get some kind of a transaction log, which you call as a delta log basically, and that gives you the capability basically like all the SSA transaction and metadata handlings and everything. So you can do time travels and so on. So basically, you have Parquet file, then you have a transaction log, and combination of this is very powerful, where you can do a number of activities. And this was very difficult basically before this delta lake, like updating something in data lake was too complex. So this delta lake solved this problem, where you don't have to worry about like if you get some update into your data lake, everything is basically done with the transaction with the help of this transaction log. So let's quickly move on to the key feature of delta lake. So basically you're going to get relational support, as I mentioned. Like you can simply perform operation of insert, update, delete rows on your data in your delta lake. And how this operation is performed basically, like whenever you perform, for example, an update operation on one or two particular records, for example. So transaction log has the capability where it will just arrange those files which is latest updated, and it will not update the original Parquet file. It will create a copy of Parquet file and have all the transaction history maintained in your transaction log. Acid transaction, or as I mentioned, like all the transaction supports are there. And time travel is basically you can take multiple versions. So thanks to this transaction log, you can go with the transaction, for example, or you can go to the state which was, for example, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, or in 1 month ago, for example. And there definitely there are variants, like how much history you want to prevent into that. But you can do time travel, you can do restore on previous data if something has gone wrong. So this is like very key feature or unique feature as part of delta lake. Now, I would like to highlight some maintenance command in Fabric, especially. I mean, some commands I think already are there if you're working with Delta Lake with current Synapse or in Databricks and so on. But Fabric also support those table maintenance operation. When we say table maintenance, it's like a performance improvement of the existing data lake, or how better you can store those data lakes basically. So one is optimize. You might have seen like a small file problem where if you are doing multiple transactions, every time you're going to have like multiple files created, multiple Parquet file created. And any big data processing engine, I mean not only Fabric, any big data processing engine works better or in more proficient way if they are have to deal a large file instead of many small files. And the same concept apply here. Like if you have multiple small files, what you can do optimize, and optimize will basically consolidate all your small files into one larger file. Now there is a something new here, like v order. So with the optimize, you can do a v order, and this v order is like again a powerful compression technique where does basically like a special sorting, kind of an encoding, and uh, a special compression method on your Parquet file. And I've seen the real example where if you do V-order, your read time on any of the way, like if you're reading this data with a SQL or a Spark, this basically like your read time has been reduced significantly. Like sometimes it is like 15 to 20%, up to 50% also you get benefit because of this special compression that you are going to have with the help of V-order. Currently, if you're working with Delta Lake, you already have Z order, but this V order is like especially designed for this engine, which basically are going to use this one leg data. So this V order you can use in the fabric, and you can get the benefit either you're doing this Spark SQL or Power BI or any other engine. If you're going to read this data, you're going to have a faster read if you do V order. Then there is a vacuum, which basically we if you want to remove all the file which are no longer needed, if you don't want to retain the history, then definitely you can do this vacuum command. And you can set this threshold period, like by default it is 7 days, but you can set the threshold period, and you can do a vacuum on that. So that is about Delta Lake maintenance thing. Now let's come to event house. So the lake house that we have talked so far is all about your batch data. For example, let's consider this as a batch category where you have to load the data and ingest data in multiple layers, like Medellin architecture layers, and get the Power BI reporting and any kind of reporting on that platform. But suppose or consider you have a requirement where you are going to deal with kind of a real-time data. This real-time data can be, for example, streaming, telemetry data, any data which is like time series data. For example, you are generating some events from any systems, or you're generating some logs for a system, or any fabric events also possible, right? So event house is basically designed in considering this situation where it is stored and optimized for your real-time data analytics. So it gives basically a solution where you can store a large volume of data which is real time in nature. And when you say real time, we already talked about like time series data. Now how it does is basically, so event house is kind of a real time version of a lake house, you can consider. But ultimately event house is a concept where you are going to create event house, but ultimately within event house you are going to have a KQL database. And KQL is something specialized for your real time analytics need. KQL is basically again like optimized for your event ingestion, your time series data and all. But it basically have a special query language which we call a Custo query language. This is like primary way like how you query a data into KQL database. So you're going to have event house. Within event house you're going to have KQL databases, and with the KQL databases you can basically query any data in form of a Custo query language. Now there are options currently, like if you want to store this one data KQL database data into one lake or not. So currently there is an option like in Fabric, you want to enable open one lake availability or not, and you can do it. Now with the KQL database, basically you can take this data from a number of sources, right? You can simply take data from storage, but that's not KQL is built for. If it is storage data, then you can definitely do it in lakehouse. But if you have event stream, you can do data from event stream. Like if you have data continuously coming data into S3 bucket or any other storage area, definitely you can do. Or you can set up some external what you say like producer consumer kind of environment, like event stream or Kafka, or this kind of environment also. You can connect as a source, and you can basically store this data in event house as a destination. So there, this feature also available into Fabric. Now a very brief overview of what is KQL. So is Kusto query language, as I mentioned, it's kind of a read-only request language. As of now, it's only read-only language where you can only read the data from KQL databases. You can't write anything with this KQL language. And it follows simply like a simply plain text kind of a query where you simply, for example, you define a table. You say like take 100, and it will give you top 100 records. You define count, you do some aggregations and so on, summarize this count by something like that, and simply you can do this. So it's basically very powerful if you have a requirement for getting the data in real time or latest data or something where you only want to retrieve the latest data set. This KQL is basically very powerful in reading such data. KQL database is not only limited to KQL query. I mean, you definitely Microsoft is recommend to use KQL queries to retrieve this data, but you can also query this data via SQL. I mean, that's all. That option is also available, but they recommend like if you do KQL, you'll get a faster retrieval in term of time series data. So that's how basically it works. Now, just to give you an example, like how this event house will be used as a destination. So what you can do, you can create an event stream in Fabric. This is kind of a real typical real time scenario where you are going to create event stream. The event stream is like nothing but capturing your real time events into Fabric. Then with the event stream, you also get a low code or no code option where you can do some transformation. So if you see like you're getting this data in the event stream, you have derived stream, and in this derived stream you have an option like you can perform some transformation. So for example, I'm getting real time data, but I don't want to load all of this data. I have some filters which I want to apply. So I can do this in simple pipeline, and I can apply some filters or do some aggregation and so on, and then I can load this data into event house as a direct ingestion into event house, and this destination as a event house I can choose, and this data will get stored into your event house. It means like it within KQL database, and it means like you can query this data using Kusto query language. So that's how this event stream scenario can work. I mean, there are different patterns you can follow, but this is like just a basic pattern I would like to highlight, so you basically understand how you use event stream with the help of or a combination of event stream plus event house. Now I would just like to highlight like how typical end-to-end data architecture will look like, because this is very useful if you were going into real-time project. This is very going to be useful where how you basically manage your batch data, your real-time data. So I think as we covered, like if you have batch data requirements, you have an option to create either definitely lakehouse, and you are going to follow like Medallion architecture. Like you can create multiple lakehouse, bronze lakehouse, silver lakehouse, and gold lakehouse. You can definitely create that, and with the help of data factory, you can pull the data into that. Now with the stream also you can create if you have real time requirement, then you can follow this approach where event stream followed by event house, and that's how you can create the real time data, and any reporting can be done on top of this either gold layer or real time dashboard. So that is like typical end to end architecture that we can we follow. Now let's go with the demo section. So in the demo, we'll see like how Fabric UI looks like and how we basically create a lake house into that. So if you are logging into Fabric, you have to go with the app.fabric.microsoft.com. Here you have a workspaces. If you not have like workspace already created, you can create a workspaces. So workspace. So for example, this is my workspace that I have created. Now once you are in workspace, you can create an item. When you go to new item, you can create anything. So for example, if I want to create a notebook, right, so I can simply go and create a notebook here. If I want to create a lake house, I can go and create a lake house. So that's how you can create a lake house also. So if you want to create a lake house, simply you give the lake house name and so on. So if I want to create, for example, this lake house, I'll just say, sorry, this name, and this lake house will be created automatically. So let's go into that. So for example, this is the lake house I created, lake branch. Now with this lake house, as I mentioned, like you have two sections mainly. You have either table section or file section. This file section you can get data in any form, like no matter like what format you are in, you can get data from any source and you can store into your file section. So for example, you have CSV files here or any JSON files or any image PDF, anything you can store into file section. But if you go with the table section, and that's how we go into for relational data or semi-structured data, that's how we create like Medallion architecture. If you want to go with this state and create a table, then this table will be created in the schema that you choose, and that's how this table will look like. So for example, this is the table that you have, but ultimately this table is by default your delta table. I mean, that's what we talked about, right? We have a delta table which store data into snippy compression packet file, and then you have a delta log associated with that. So you can simply go and see view files and see all of the things related to that. I think as we talked about, just quickly want to show like we have the maintenance. So as we talked about optimize, we order, so that you can apply here. Now, so for example, as I mentioned, the scenario where you have two department and two workspace, for example. So you have bronze, you have so you have this workspace which belong to different department. Now you have different workspace belong to different department. Now you can create a shortcut. So that's how, for example, you can go and you can create a new table shortcut, and this shortcut can be anything. It can be file, it can be delta table also, and it is like two type of shortcut that you can create, like internal, external. And external, like these are the sources that currently it support. If you create one leg shortcut, then you can go and create with the existing data set. So for example, this is the existing shortcut that I have created, and this is nothing but pointing to the data set stored into another lake house with another workspace, I will say. So if anyone want to use this data in another workspace or another department, they can simply go and create the shortcut. So this is the shortcut icon here, and they can simply access the data, and they will feel like this data is available here, like you don't have to copy this data. And also this is also like powerful feature. Yeah, I think that's how you can do. You can go with this one like catalog. You have something called real time thing, where you see like what kind of real time data that you have, which also you can see here. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to show quickly on the demo. But yeah, I think that's it. Let me, yeah, there are some links that I mentioned, like useful links where you can understand like how your deployment patterns and all look like. But I'll keep some time for questions. So yeah, I think let's go with Q&A. Lisa, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. To be honest, we have a lot of questions, but we have time maybe for maybe 4 or 5 questions for you.
Sure.
And yeah, the other one you will answer them later. In the description link, in the description we have a link for the talk page, and all the questions will be here. So the first question. How would this work within a multi-cloud strategy? For example, could we use a national cloud for sensitive data and Microsoft for everything else?
Okay. Yeah, that's very good question, I would say. I mean, as far as my understanding, definitely you can use it, because Fabric is or one leg concept is basically give you the facility where you store the data, whatever your requirement is, but you can use this data. I mean, there are some options. I'm not sure if it is currently in preview, but there are some external data sharing is also an option which you can do. So if your data is sitting in one leg, and if you want to share this data with external thing, that also you can do. If you have multi cloud, for example, you can utilize this shortcut feature. I think nowadays, recently I was going through this Fabric announcement and all. They also announced like Databricks. If you have data in Databricks, you can simply use one like data and perform some work in Databricks. So there are like cross connection options also available, and Fabric is like as evolving, they are providing a lot of options. In Snowflake also this option is available. Amazon, as I'm not sure, but Databricks and Snowflake, I'm sure that these options are available, where user can directly query the data available in one lake with external share or some other options. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you very much. The next question is, if a team already using Databricks or Snowflake, is Fabric still make sense or not really?
Uh, I would say again depend on your particular organization requirement. So majority of the time I see like if organization has a more lean toward BI requirement, if they are having existing Azure technology, if they already invested in Azure, then they are pretty much straightforward for them to use Azure. Databricks and Snowflake, again, like if you have everything already worked and all your requirements getting fulfilled, uh, I don't see directly direct connection. Then unnecessary, you should use definitely this Fabric for your the same kind of work which you're already doing it. But with the introduction of this AI Foundry and all, where Microsoft is basically providing all this integration for AI work also within the Fabric, and that's how it's going to become more popular and more advanced in such a way where even like AI LLM agent will be much easier as compared to Databricks and Snowflake. You can simply go and with the no code, basically you can create your AI agent, and you can uh, have a deep integration with AI Foundry. So in that matter, if you want to utilize those service with the low code feature, then definitely Fabric is the best option here.
Hmm. Okay, and do you think Fabric will replace classic Azure data stack, or they will live together?
Uh, I mean, for time being, definitely it will live together. It will work together. Definitely, it's not going to replace like in a day or year, I would say, because it's not a complete, I would say, replacement. I mean, definitely there are Azure projects. For example, even Microsoft is not saying that you're going to shut off with your all existing Azure project, right? They are going to provide a platform within the Fabric also, so you can do a smooth transition. So, for example, just a basic example quickly, maybe you have ADA pipeline, right? You have ADA for CNS pipeline. Fabric is currently it is in preview, but they are going to introduce an option where you simply run your ADA pipeline via Fabric. So you don't have to worry about like building all your pipelines and everything converting into Fabric. You can simply run ADA pipeline via Fabric also. So definitely this transition will be smoother, and even Microsoft is not saying that you do a transition complete code by code and everything. You can integrate these tools and they can work together and they can go together, and then slowly you can basically move toward Fabric to get the unified experience. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. The next question is how role-based access works here, since it's one lake anyone can access.
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, I mean, although it's one lake, it's centralized location, but access are basically work in all possible levels. So starting from tenant level, workspace level, or you can say like item level, or you can say like row level and everything. So tenant and workspace, something which basically you can leave this activity to admin, where they can give the access and all. But if you're a data engineer, for example, you can provide the access at item level. So if you are creating a lake house, your data is will be visible only to the user who have the access either at the high level like workspace level, but this data will not be visible to any other person. For example, you can consider, if you are already from Azure background, then you have a container, right? So you can provide role-based access control into ADLS container. So your container is a workspace. So if you have workspace one, for example, this is a container. Within a workspace, a container, you have lake house. This lake house is a folder, and within the lake house, you have items like table one, table two, table three, everything. These are like your objects within the lake house. So that's how basically every level has a different access pattern, and this data will not be available by default to any user who has direct, basically, until it is given at the high level like tenant level or workspace level. But at each and every level you have a mechanism where you can share this data to any to user, but it's up to you like how you want to share it. So this role based access control is basically work quite well in Fabric, where each and every level support a dedicated security mechanism, basically. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the last question for you today: is it possible to create constraints such as primary key and foreign key on a delta table in a data lakehouse?
I think not directly. I mean, you can't create primary key constraint directly. I'm sure. I think maybe data warehouse might have some option, but in the lake house, you do directly. You can't create directly, but you can create some indexing in term of like JIT ordering, and maybe I think even cluster by is going to be supported in near future. That's how you can do it. But this lake house is dedicatedly for this kind of a scenario where you're working at a Parquet format and all. So you can do some message transactions and everything, but not like directly relational thing. If you want to go with this relational approach, then you can simply create a data warehouse if you have such requirement, where you can create those kind of keys and everything. And you you can do all the SQL that you are doing currently in any of the Azure project or any of the SQL project, for example. You can utilize any of the stored procedures and everything, and you can work with the data warehouse. So Fabric gives you two options, like you either go with the lakehouse or data warehouse. And if your background is SQL, if your requirement is more about SQL, then you can definitely go with the warehouse, and you can create all such things there. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you very much. And that concludes this session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please leave your feedback using the link in the description. You can also give the speaker a thank you badge, rate this talk, and download this presentation from the talk page. Thank you, Naveen, for the great talk, and see you at our next session.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And if any questions are pending, I'll go through the chat and I will try to answer those questions. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Mm.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.